It's time to do my predictions for the 12 matches coming up in week 2 of the CDL. And since the Pick'ems website is not live yet, I made my own little graphic here. But once the Pick'ems website is live, I'll be able to use that for these prediction videos. So we have 12 matches this week because there are only 2 qualifying weeks heading into Major 1 because it is the Pro-Am, and since they have group play, they don't need to play as many qualifying matches. But we do have 12 matches, like I said here, all laid out as you can see on the screen, and let's go through them. And also, let me just say, I didn't get to watch a ton of the gameplay from week 1. I got to see some clips and highlights and see some of the stats and stuff on Breaking Point, but overall I didn't get to watch too much because I had a pretty busy weekend, so I'm definitely excited to watch this coming weekend. Now let's kick it off with the first match, which is Seattle Surge versus the London Royal Ravens. Now I have Seattle winning this 3-2, which I know is a little bit odd, being that Seattle had a pretty tough start to the year. So as we can see here, if we look at the standings, London is 2-0 and Seattle is 0-2. I personally thought Seattle was going to be pretty decent coming into this year, but if we look here, Seattle lost 3-2 to LAG and then 3-1 to Boston. Boston definitely seems like a really good team this year. LAG also seems pretty solid. And then London beat LAG, who obviously beat Seattle, and they also 3-0'd the Subliners. But I do think Seattle will pick it up in week 2 and get this victory. Then for the second match, Florida Mutineers versus Minnesota Rocker, I have this going 3-1 the way of Minnesota. The Rocker are another team that are 2-0 after week 1. Florida is 1-1 and definitely don't look as much of like an easy team as maybe people would have thought they were just by looking at their roster. But overall, I don't really think Florida is on the level of Minnesota. And yes, I know Minnesota shouldn't have won their first match against OpTic, but unfortunately, you know, it is what it is. We can't change that, so we're just gonna have to go based on what the, you know, official standings say on the website. Then we have New York Subliners versus LAG, which I do think could be a good series, but I'm gonna go LAG 3-2. Subliners overall probably looking like the weakest team after week 1. I mean, 3-0 against London, and then 3-1 or 3-1 against, you know, Toronto. So definitely not looking like a super strong team after the week. I mean, even Vegas put up some better fights against other teams. So definitely, you know, Subliners aren't looking too great, and I think that's going to continue into this week. Then we have the Toronto Ultra versus the Atlanta FAZE. Now I'm going Atlanta FAZE 3-1. I think Toronto are a good team. I think they have a lot of promise. I do think they're going to get exponentially better throughout the year, but I think, you know, Atlanta's already, you know, really good, obviously filled with veterans, whereas Toronto is a much younger team. So I think there's going to take some time for them to get into their groove. I thought Scrap looked really good in his first 2 series, coming in as a rookie. Definitely still my rookie of the year guy. And yeah, definitely going to go Atlanta. Then we have Atlanta FaZe again versus the Vegas Legion. I'm going to go 3-0. I mean, I think overall, obviously we know what to expect out of the Atlanta FaZe team for the most part. Vegas, on the other hand, you know, 3-2 to Florida and then 3-1 to LA Thieves. So unfortunately, 2 bad losses. I mean, I'm sure we all saw the clips of the game 5 round 11 against the Mutineers where Temp stunned himself and then they all ran 1 by 1 and died. So definitely have some things they need to work out, but they do look pretty solid. But I don't think they look like they're a match for Atlanta FaZe right now. Then we have OpTic Texas versus London Royal Ravens, and maybe this is a surprise to some people because of how good London look, but I'm going 3-1 OpTic. I think OpTic look really strong. I think they got a little bit of the anger on their side based on what happened in their first match against the Minnesota Rocker. I do think London look really good. I think it's very surprising as to what we've seen from London so far. I mean, 3-0 against the Subliners and 3-2 against the Gorillas. Those are great series, and obviously, you know, tied for first in the standings. But if you see here on the Breaking Point website, Scump is currently tied with Celium, leading the league in overall KD. I do think that's interesting. I don't think that's going to hold obviously year long, but I do think that, you know, is very interesting to see. And I think that the overall, I think OpTic Texas look like a really solid team. Then we have the New York Subliners versus the Boston Breach. I do think Boston handles this pretty swiftly. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think the Subliners are going to see more success this week as they did last week. I do think Boston looks really good. Like I said during the off season, I said that I think if they picking up a guy like Awakening is really good for this team. You can see here him 5th overall on the standings for on the overall KD category. I mean, you can see him literally on like almost every category here. You see Awakening's name or Method's name, you know, Vivid, Nero. So overall, I think this team, you know, looks really good. I'm surprised that they're hitting the peak that they are right now. I do think this might not be their peak. They could get better, but I'm surprised at the level they're hitting currently. And I'm definitely interested to see them being the last of the 3 2-0 teams, what they can continue to do this week. And I definitely think they can handle the subliners. Then we have the LA Thieves versus the Florida Mutineers. I'm going 3-0 Thieves. I think Florida, like I said, is a solid team. I do think LA Thieves are obviously better. I'm pretty sure everyone can agree on that. But, after that tough loss to Atlanta FaZe in game 5 last week for the Thieves, I do think they're going to be coming out a little bit more fiery. And knowing they have a big match against OpTic Texas on Sunday, I think they're really going to want to get this, easier win against a Florida Mutineers team, which they should be able to beat. Then we have the Minnesota Rocker versus the Vegas Legion. Hopefully I don't call them Paris throughout any of these videos. I don't think I have, but if I have, I apologize. But obviously I'm going to have to get used to calling them Vegas. But I have 3-1 Minnesota Rocker. I do think Minnesota is a really good team, despite the controversy and what happened in the first game against OpTic. I do think they are a really good team with a really high potential. I do think Vegas could get it together, but right now I think between Vegas and Florida, those are the 2 teams that could be easier, and the New York Subliners. I think those are the 3 teams that could be easier wins for some teams. So unfortunately for Vegas, going up against Minnesota and Atlanta FaZe in this week definitely didn't do them any favors. Then we have the Seattle Surge versus the Toronto Ultra. I'm going Surge 3-2. I think right now I'm a Surge believer. Last year I was not a Surge believer, and every time I picked against them they ended up winning. So this year I'm changing my ways. I'm believing in Surge. I really believe in Pred and Sib, specifically Pred. If you watched my awards video, don't want to spoil it too bad, so go watch that now. But I did predict Pred to win MVP for this season, so I do think Seattle Surge are going to need to step it up, and I do think they can. Not to mention, if you look at the stats here, you can see in Pred and Sib in a lot of these categories in these top 5s. So I do think, I think these guys are going to really get it going. Coming into probably the biggest matchup of the weekend, we have the LA Thieves versus OpTic Texas as our second to last match on December 11th, Sunday. I do have LA Thieves taking this 3-2. I think this is an interesting matchup. I think either of these teams can win. I think they both look really good. I think historically LA Thieves tends to get the better of OpTic, whatever the reason may be. I'm not really sure, but I do think LA Thieves are just maybe a little bit better, depending on how it goes for OpTic against London, depending on how it goes for LA Thieves against Florida. Both these teams I think will be coming off a win, but you never really know. If one of these teams is going to lose, I do think it'll be OpTic, just because I think London is a better team than Florida. So if OpTic ends up coming up off a loss, I think they might be a little bit tilted, especially with what happened with Minnesota. But either way, I think LA Thieves might just have that slight edge, 3-2. And in the last match, Boston Breach versus LA Gorillas. I think this could be a good one as well, but I'm going to go Boston Breach 3-2. I think Boston just overall looks like a really good team, and I do think they end up going 4-0 in this, in this stage 1 heading into major 1, and I think they look like a force that could really make a deep run into the bracket at the Pro Am and Major 1. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like. Let me know which team surprised you most in week 1. I'd love to see what you all. I think for me, it has to be probably London. Everyone I think thought London was going to be a bottom 2, bottom 3 team. So definitely interested to see how they continue to do going into next week. And also in terms of power rank videos, if you watched any of my power rank videos last week, I used to post those pretty much after every single match week and after majors. But being as I didn't really get to watch too much of week 1, I don't think I can really do a power ranking. So after this week, hopefully I'll be able to do a power ranking heading into the first major. So if you're interested in that, make sure to sub to the channel, and hopefully I will see you all in the next video.